So, as I mentioned a few videos ago, or depending on when I upload these guys, I had mentioned that 2018 hasn't really brought us a whole lot of really great and standout albums. And a couple of my followers had chimed in and said, hey, what about these guys? And for the most part, you guys were right, and I'm excited to talk about this one. So, let's dive into it.
And the way you fly through the dark of night.
The Wars, Act 1 by the Family Crest. So, the Family Crest is a indie rock band from San Francisco. These guys are very similar to, say, probably the easiest comparison that I can make is the Polyphonic Spree, where they've got a hell of a lot of members and one focal point. And I will admit, the first couple of tracks off of this really caught my attention. To Love You and It Keeps Us Dancing, these couple of tracks had really grabbed my attention and really held on. And I really liked the presentation that these guys had. It reminded me of a lot of different bands all at once, like using the Polyphonic Spree as a springboard. It reminded me of that. The lead singer reminds me straight up of like the singer of 21 Pilots, and that very indie vocals, like very indie. Like whenever I hear vocals like this, I always think of the Vine like this.
Welcome to my kitchen. We have bananas and avocado.
It's that kind of presentation, you know, like the zeitgeist of the time of like the 90s, where it was very like vowel intensive, like that Soundgarden and Pearl Jam of the hey, I, ho, you. Here it has that same kind of a capture, but of the modern style of music, where it's like very singing, like I can't really do it justice, but the moment you hear it, it's like a sore thumb. You're like, oh yeah, that's nothing new. And it didn't really bother me too much of, as I said, the first two tracks, but upon repeated listenings, it started to wear me down a little bit of just how modern it was. Like, I know this isn't the case, but it definitely feels like there's a committee standing behind these guys going, okay, we need this popular motif with this popular motif with this popular motif, and we'll bring it all together and we'll create this. And in some ways it worked, because upon, as I said, first listen, I'm like, all right, this is great. But upon repeated listens, I'm like, wait a minute. It Keeps Us Dancing feels very much like something we would hear from Mumford & Sons, and it's almost glaringly obvious how they're trying to capture that spirit. And Take Tonight feels very much like an Arcade Fire song. And again, it's almost glaringly obvious. I'm like, this sounds right off of like their Funeral album or The Suburbs. Like it's almost glaringly obvious at times, and so it feels like all these different things are being grabbed onto. Yeah, like other tracks like Still Waiting has a very Shins feel to it. Like it's again glaringly obvious. I'm like, nope, that's the Shins guys. And Daggers feels right out of Radiohead, like they're Kid A or Amnesia, or probably even like In Rainbows, where I'm like, no, that's, again, you're not, like, I don't even know if it's intentional, and that's the thing. Like, I don't know if these guys are purposely saying, I want this sound on here, and I want this sound on here. I think it's just, like, because we're so inundated with these different kinds of sounds, it's hard not to write in that similar kind of vein, because no artist is a real island. Like, you're going to be influenced by the sounds that you listen to, but like, let's take, for instance, The Deer Hunter, which, if you guys are a follower of mine and you love my videos, you know how much I love The Deer Hunter. Like, let's take The Deer Hunter, because the two can be drawn a line, like, connecting. Where The Deer Hunter takes their influences, and Casey takes his influences, and you can hear the influence kind of in there within the brush strokes and the techniques that he uses, but it's still, at the end of the day, a brand new thing and a brand new item. But when we look at The Wars and we look at the Family Crest, those are very glaringly obvious. Not even the brushstrokes, but it's the entire picture that's being painted. It looks exactly like somebody else's. And I think that's probably my main issue that I have with this band so far, that the more that I listen to these songs, the more I'm like, this isn't really your own work. And I mean, it does sound like The Deer Hunter at times as well, and I know this one isn't probably as obvious, because The Deer Hunter isn't quite as well known, but it does feel like what The Deer Hunter would sound like if they pushed more towards the mainstream audience. Now, here's another thing that again, I don't want to dump all over this album, because at the end of the day, it's a fine album. There's something that these guys do that it's very similar to what the Polyphonic Spree does, where they've got this whole idea of incorporating all these different musicians in to create such beautiful music, but half, if not 75% of these songs are simply the one guy on the guitar or on the piano, and that's it. And then the rest are just kind of filler. And I feel like that is a gravely missed opportunity and a huge mistake from the band at not incorporating these guys a little bit more. Like, if you're going for that symphonic sound and you're going for that big symphonic movements, utilize those quieter instruments on those tracks. Like, incorporate the strings a little bit more, incorporate a clarinet or a flute, incorporate the harp. Like, these are underutilized instruments within our day and age, where it's very mass produced in terms of being either a guitar or a piano, or just either like completely synthesized noises. Like, if you've got those real instruments and there are people ready to play it, incorporate them in as many songs as you can, because when over half is just the one guy on a guitar or on a piano, I'm like, I can find that anywhere. You guys have this area that can really set you apart, and you're not utilizing that, and I think that's a criminal offense within this particular style of music. I mean, I didn't talk too much about the individual songs on here, just because I feel like if you had checked out the influences that I told you about, you kind of get a sense and a feeling for what's to be expected on this album. Like, some of these songs on here, as I said, the first two tracks really caught my attention. Daggers is pretty fun because, again, it reminds me of Radiohead, and I love Radiohead. And the weird part is, even though this album is almost an hour long, with the ending of a rocks resting on your back, I didn't realize this was the end. And I know it's not the end because it's Act 1, so you will assume that there's going to be more acts to come. But even within, like, Cambria and Coheed, or Coheed and Cambria, whatever their name is, and the Deer Hunter, even though they act in acts, each album still has an ending. Like, it has a full realized ending, and this one didn't. It just felt like there should have been more, and there wasn't, and I was kind of taken back about that. So, again, there's a lot of knocks against this album, and I don't want to say skip it. I really don't want to have to say that, because there are still some fun parts on this, and I can see where the band could go within this, and I really want to say go for this album, but I'm trapped between a stream to see if this is your jam, because it is interesting at times, and the full-on skip. So I'm kind of wedged between those two. Yeah, I'm just going to leave it there. You know, if this was a different YouTube channel, I'd say this is not good, but I still want to give it the benefit of the doubt, and I still want people to check it out because it might be your thing. So yeah, stream it, but don't invest any real time or money into this unless it grabs you on the first listen. So that's about it from me with The War, Act 1, from the family Crest. What did you guys think of this? If you're a fan of the band, how does it compare to their past works? Again, this is the only album I've heard from them, so let me know about that, as well as your own thoughts about this particular piece by commenting down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. As always, you guys are definitely the best. And until next time, notes out.